This is Shine On Policycast, the podcast that brings you EU policy updates relevant to solar. I'm your host Bethany. Let's get started. Welcome back to Shine On Policycast, Arthur. Arthur is our policy advisor on electrification. We previously had him on talking about skills because he's got a very diverse brief. But this season 3 Policycast is all about the European elections, and we've got the Solar For Europe Manifesto here. I'm looking at it, and for those who aren't watching, it's a very brightly coloured manifesto that you can find on our website. And Arthur has been tasked with some homework to bring a prop to Policycast.
Yes.
And I have to guess why it's anything to do with our manifesto or the elections.
Can I show it to the people when we're watching?
Please, and then describe it for people who are just listening.
Yes, indeed. So for those that can't see it, maybe listening online, it's an electric lamp, but that looks like an oil lamp.
Ah, okay.
Why do you think I brought this?
This is very charitable. I think I can guess why this is relevant to our manifesto.
Yeah?
Well, it's electrification, isn't it? Although now we're kind of glamorizing the use of oil, so I don't know how I feel about that. But
Yeah, maybe. No, but I mean, okay. I brought it for 2 reasons.
Please.
First, I'm a real bobo from Saint-Gilles, Brussels, so I like old stuff that...
It's new.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and
Do
I
you have
spend
a
a lot of
record
money on
player?
that. No, I don't, but
Okay.
yeah, I'd like one actually. And the second thing is, it's a nice look back at history. To think about electrification, how far it's gone. Like before, you had people on the street like go up, put oil in each and every lamp and light it up, so you could have light on the street. Sorry. And now you flip a switch and you have electricity. How wonderful is that?
Magic.
Yeah.
So then this relates to electrification, and the EU elections are coming up, and the future of the energy system is in the voters' hands. So what do you want policymakers, politicians to have in mind about that whenever they're out campaigning?
I want to remind them, obviously, about electrification, but just maybe one number. We've been stagnating for years at a electrification level of 25%. When you think about it, it means that even if we decarbonize entirely electricity production, like you have solar and wind, 100% of the electricity system is done by wind and solar, you've done 1/4 of the job. And so it's still an immense way to go now. So with the Electrification Alliance, we can talk about it later, but we have a clear path forward and we want to set targets for that. It's 35% of electrification by 2030. It's 50% by 2040 and 70% by 2050. And only that way we can reach climate neutrality.
Okay. And then if we can take a step back from that, I mean, in our manifesto, we have improving solar PV integration in highly electrified energy systems.
Yeah.
And we know what that means, hopefully. But if you had to explain it in under 60 seconds to somebody who doesn't follow energy files in Brussels, how would you describe it?
Yeah, Listen, it's actually a lot of difficult words for something very simple. It's unleashing the potential of solar as much as possible everywhere. It's let's unleash the decarbonized source of electricity and put it everywhere. So it's 2 things. First of all, we know it's a variable source of electricity. We know it doesn't shine 24/7, so you have to adapt the grid and the end use so that you can store the electricity, use it when it's available, and adapt the end use also a little bit to this variability. So adapt to that. And the second thing is, let's make sure just to electrify a lot of our uses. Most of our houses, most of our transports, most of our factories actually even can be electrified. And it's the only way for solar to reach those usages. So just those 2 things are really, really critical to understand, I think.
Yeah, but that's clear. So it's moving away from gas cooker in your home and using a washing machine when it's midday and there's loads of sun.
Yeah, and that itself, even without adding more renewables on the grid, that itself is a move for decarbonization.
Great. And then it's a great goal to have. But then what are the key elements that we need to focus on to get there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of policy you could potentially put in place. But I'm just going to talk about very practical stuff, not so many rules of EU policies whatsoever. I'm going to talk about very practical stuff. So the first is the money. Second is our grids. And the third is the skills needed for that. So we need money, that's for sure. There's a grid action plan put out by the European Commission, details the investment needs for the grids. You can read that out. I'm just going to put out a few things here. There's some inadequacies still in the way we spend money on energy.
No.
No, but this, for example, after the invasion of Ukraine, the European Commission said, okay, let's put new rules on how we spend money on energy through one route, which is the Recovery and Resilience Facility. In that document, it still says that some of the most urgent, important spendings that we do as the EU is gas assets, it's LNG terminals, it's pipelines. You have to explain me how so. How is that so important from the public sector, at least? Of course, there's a security of supply issue, but those last years and years, the assets, and we need to get rid of them. The second thing, as an example, is the capacity mechanism and the electricity market design. We have a very nice derogation where you can keep subsidizing your coal plants because they add some sense to your flexibility to the grid.
But this is the outdated idea of base load.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is still very much in the text, even those that are adopted today, even though we all know there's an urgency. So we need to reverse a bit that and really align our money with our priorities. So that will come with huge investments, and policy-wise, it will come in the debates for the multi-annual financial framework, which is basically the 7-year budget of the EU in 2027. It will also come much quicker if we align the state aid rules. A lot of state aid guidelines can all be adapted accordingly. But please, I'm going to make a call here, if that's possible.
Please, go ahead.
There's something called the Energy Taxation Directive. It's been proposed by the European Commission 3 years ago.
Okay.
There's still no text out there, because it needs to be adopted in unanimity in the Council. It means all member states must agree on the same details everywhere on that sheet. But it's very important. Right now, in most countries in Europe, you pay more for electricity, you pay more taxes and levies for electricity than you do for gas. That means that if you transition away from fossil fuels, you're sanctioned, you pay more.
It should be the other way around.
It should be the other way around. So that's what the Commission proposed, and you can work on the details, but at least you need to land this. So if anybody listening or watching this is remotely involved in the working of Energy Taxation Directive, land this before the end of this mandate. That's the first thing. I'm sorry, there's a lot of things.
Okay, keep going.
But this is just investment. The second thing is grids. So we all know we need more grids. We need more lines to connect more solar with more electrified usages. That's just plain and simple. But there's a few mentions of that effort already in some legislation that is recently adopted. It's the electricity market design, the gas package. There's also non-legislative documents such as the grid action plan. There's a lot of mentions of the needs for grids. And one of the things that is really important now is that we get around the table with the electricity guys, the gas guys, the hydrogen guys, also, of course, consulting all the renewable electricity sector, but coming together and really planning in detail how our grid and our system is going to look like around Europe. And then through that effort, we can start thinking, okay, where can we put some flexibilities? Where can we put some storage, for example, so that the grid can handle itself with the estimated numbers for deployment that we have? How can it support itself and not just fall out of electricity? And also, with that, you can sort of make already anticipatory investments, we call that. So you can invest even before you're sure that the plant will come. So now it takes a lot of time to get connection to the grid. Maybe if you plan in advance, it can all come down at the same time. And once, as long as we don't do this, we're still going to have gas assets. So if we start doing this really good planning together, we're going to have a good plan of how we decommission gas grids, which we don't have at the moment. And the third thing is skills, and of course I talk about this all the time here, but it's just very simple. Again, not very complicated policy. It's not what we need. It's just we need to understand that there's a lot of factories. So if you're a worker in a car factory, in a steel factory, you need to transition. It's really difficult. It's really unfortunate for them, but they're going to have to transition. And it's not simple. It's not because you build cars working on internal combustion engine that you can build electric cars. It's completely different. And we have to accept that. And it's not because you are a coal miner that you can become a solar installer. It's very different. But we have to work hand in hand with those sectors and create a path for them for using what they can use as skills in the new sectors.
Yeah.
but as fast as possible.
And retraining and just making sure the support network is there, so you don't have you don't have sectors of people left unemployed or, angry or disenfranchised from the Green Deal, because everybody should be brought along. That's what the just transition is.
Yeah, but there are some jobs for the transition. I think we put out something that said that we're going to create 3 million jobs in this electrification world, just with the renewables and the grids and the cars. And so
it doesn't have to be a problem, but we just need to...
Exactly. The jobs are going to be there.
Yeah.
It's a question of how well we make people transition to those new jobs.
Okay. And you mentioned it a little earlier, but the Electrification Alliance, SolarPower Europe, very happy to be a founding member of the Electrification Alliance. It's a group of, I think, 10 associations in Brussels, really focused on the need to electrify now. That's actually the hashtag, which you can check out. This platform really emphasises the need to focus on direct electrification. It's the most cost-effective way to decarbonise. And we have the Electrification Manifesto, which sits alongside the Solar for Europe Manifesto. So I know this is a bit of your baby, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about it.
It's a common baby. We've done it
a shared
together,
baby.
I have to say.
It takes a village.
But everything I said around investments, grids and skills, you can all find it there. And we're calling the European Commission the next one. So it will come towards the end of this year. And we're asking very clearly for the Commission that will come to publish an Electrification Act in the first 100 days. So the Napoleon idea that you need to come up with an act in the first 100 days. So we
need to see it in the State of the Union, and we need to see it in the...
Yeah, but I mean, it needs to come. And I think, for example, in these days we're all talking about the new modeling that the Commission is coming up with for the 2040 climate strategy. And in there, the electrification numbers are pretty good. But why isn't that in any law? Why aren't we not putting a real target and saying it's binding now? Okay, we're going to this 35% electrification rate by 2030 and so on until 2050. It needs to be put in place so that every business knows there's a clear direction of travel. And then all those enabling conditions I talked about also need to be there. Great.
And I mean, you mentioned it a little bit in your last answer as well, but it's clear for all of this, for the electrification and improving grids. I mean, there's a cybersecurity aspect that we didn't go too much into, but it does require that human element and that reskilling. So how can we go about that, and what sort of actions can we take at EU level or recommend at national level?
Yeah, we just put out a paper, by the way,
which you can find on the SolarPower Europe
jobs and
website.
Skills. Yeah, with a full strategy. It's all laid out there if you want to have a look. But I mean, essentially, I'm going to talk about two things here: what we do and what we need from those guys in the Commission. So the first thing is, I think there's a big mismatch in terms of the skills that are out there, the skills that some companies are saying we can teach you, and then the skills that are actually needed.
Okay.
And because there's a bit of a lack of public support in the last few years, a lot of companies individually have launched what they call their own solar academy.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a big facility where you train how to install the panels.
It's all company specific.
Yeah. And so with the specificities of each equipment they're using. And this is cool. I mean, it's great. It's giving opportunities for people to go on a project for 6 months, for example, and install a big project. It's really nice. But it's all a bit different in every country. And so what we're doing with the European Commission, the European funded project, we're trying to standardize all that and make sure that if you have gone through one of the trainings that are part of this, you have a paper that says, I know how to install a solar project well, you can employ me anywhere in Europe.
Right.
That would be amazing. It would make everything faster. You can transition faster to a new company. The in-house training that you still need to take would be tiny and really fast. And the installations would be safer and of better quality. So many things. And then the second thing is, we absolutely need more support, though, for the technical and vocational education.
Yeah.
It remains, I talked about it last time, I'm gonna talk about it again. We can do our best to lay down on a piece of paper everything you need to train, to teach young people that want to go into the sector, but at some point, if there's no school, if there's no communication around it, if no one tells people to go there, it's difficult. So, I mean, once again, we're going to say it, people need to be driven to those jobs, and be it job agencies, be it the schools, the state, everywhere, people need to be directed to the jobs of the future, and those are them.
Great. So yeah, talking about skills is super people focused. So we can also zoom back out and talk about the other thing that's super people focused, elections. And you're French. So tell us a little bit about the voting setup in France and why you presumably think that it's important to vote.
It is really important to vote. So I really encourage anybody out there that's 18 and plus to register. You have to go and register until the 3rd of May. Election is going to take place on the 9th. Personally, I'm going to go in Brussels to the embassy to vote for myself. Not for myself, because I'm not going to be an MEP, but to vote.
Something to aspire to down the line.
Who knows?
The election campaign starts here.
Please make more podcasts. We're going to elect 81 people to go. So you're going to vote with lists. So you just vote for a group, a list, which will form a delegation in the European Parliament. It will go in the group. Anyway, you vote for a list and not a single person. But I think it's really, really important. And more Europe takes takes responsibility on topics that are really close to people. It's not just something out there with the Stability Pact and things that are a bit distant. I think the number of things that we can buy in supermarkets, I think the climate, I think the cars that we drive, it's all driven by the EU, and a lot of questions are being dealt with here. If you want to talk about the climate more, if you want to talk about agriculture more, if you want your vision of all this to be represented, it's at the EU level that it really happens. So that's all I wanted to say. Go vote.
Go vote. Perfect way to end it. But thanks so much for your insights today, Arthur. And maybe we'll have you back at Policycast.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. This podcast is brought to you by SolarPower Europe. If you don't want to miss our next episode, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Shine on.